Truth lies in propaganda. What you're about to watch and listen to is a video from Sky News Australia concerning Mr. Nigel Farage. Now, if there is anybody out there who watches Sky News UK and Sky News Australia, you will know that there is a difference between like day and night. Sky News UK have completely veered off to the left. Sky News Australia have remained on the right side of truth, probably are considered more conservative than leftists, and what you're about to see and hear now is probably the best analysis of Nigel Farage, the man, the politician, and the person who basically changed a lot of political factors, not only UK-wide, not only EU-wide, but probably worldwide. And in this report from Sky News Australia, there is not one word of lies and there is not one word of propaganda. Have fun and enjoy.
We're still partying after the phenomenal landslide win for common sense in Britain and for Boris Johnson. With me punching our fists in the air are the undefeated, exultant Rita Panahi and the victorious, jubilant James Morrow. As I said last week, I always believed Boris Johnson would win and that Nigel Farage's Brexit party would help rather than hinder that process, which is indeed what happened, with the Brexit party taking sufficient seats off Labour in many northern seats to allow the Tories to win in their first-past-the-post system. Boris Johnson is now a Conservative hero, and rightly so. But Nigel Farage is, in my opinion, one of the great, if not the greatest, British political figures since Margaret Thatcher, and in every way the father of Brexit. It was back in 1992 that Farage, an ordinary businessman, quit the Tory party in disgust at Prime Minister John Major's signing of the Maastricht Treaty against the express wishes of deposed former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Farage, like many other ordinary hard-working Brits, viewed joining the EU as a total betrayal because it ceded British sovereignty to the unelected mandarins of Brussels and thus began the monstrosity that became the EU. So he single-handedly decided to bloody well do something about it. For 27 years, Nigel Farage has fought relentlessly to reverse the mistake of Maastricht and to get Britain back out of the EU, a seemingly impossible task against formidable forces. Over that time, he formed not one but two political parties, first UKIP and then Brexit, that were so successful that they bent the Conservatives to his will time after time. Farage himself was repeatedly elected to be a member of the European Parliament, where he made passionate speeches mocking and attacking the very institution that he was determined to tear down.
I ask myself the question, why would a successful country that's enjoyed 1,000 years of independence give up its right of self-government to the unelected non-entities that we see sitting before us this morning? Well, you've decided to head off on the Titanic towards economic and democratic disaster, and we're now in a lifeboat outside the Titanic, but we're threatened by a bow wave that is going to come and engulf us if we're not careful, and it's retribution, and we've heard the language of retribution this morning. Financial markets legislation is going to be imposed upon Britain, and we will have no influence whatsoever over any of it. Just look at the confusion. We've got you as the President of the European Commission, we've got a President of the European Parliament, we've got my old friend Herman Van Rompuy, who is the permanent President of the European Council, we've got the Poles, they're now Presidents temporarily of the European Council, we've got Presidents all round this room, goodness me, even I'm a President. I mean, I'm not sure what the collective noun for presidents is, perhaps an incompetence, I don't know. Now I know that virtually none of you have ever done a proper job in your lives, or worked in business, or worked in trade, or indeed ever created a job. But listen.
Finally, on June 23rd, 2016, the Brexit referendum he had fought so hard for took place. Of course, the accepted wisdom by the media lovies, the academics, the politicians and the rest was that it was a huge joke and that sensible Brits would vote to remain in the EU. Here in Australia, only a handful of us predicted that Leave would win. For my part, having seen what decades of rampant unchecked immigration throughout Britain had done to people's lifestyles and communities, and the terrifying erosion of British sovereignty, I had absolutely no doubt Brexit would win. And when it did, I was delighted to be invited by John O'Sullivan, the great former editor of the excellent Quadrant magazine, to a slap-up meal for everybody who had publicly supported Brexit. Well, we all fitted around one table. But what a table it was, and I was extremely honoured and privileged to be sitting alongside John Howard, Tim Blair, Rebecca Weiser, Daisy Cousins and others. But the treacherous lovies refused to accept the Brexit result and fought back in every way they could. Theresa May became Prime Minister and for 3 agonising years failed to do what 17.5 million Brits had voted for, to quit the European Union. So eventually, funnily enough, at a Spectator Australia conference here in Sydney, Nigel Farage declared he was getting back in the saddle and was ready to do it all over again with a brand new party to fight for Brexit. Against all the odds, once more, this brilliant political campaigner and genuinely entertaining man prevailed. When Farage's new party ran in the EU elections earlier this year, they trounced all the other British parties. A panicked Tory party dumped the woefully hopeless Theresa May, the Malcolm Turnbull of Britain, and installed Boris Johnson instead. Finally, recognising the very real risk that his own party, if it split the Brexit vote, could actually allow the horror of a Corbyn government, Nigel became Noble Nigel, deciding not to personally stand for election himself and structuring his entire election strategy to inflict maximum damage on Labour and to help wherever possible the Tories. And it worked. Brilliantly. According to The Economist, the most important moment in the campaign may have been the decision by Nigel Farage, leader of the Brexit Party, not to run candidates in Tory-held seats.
There are lots of working-class Labour voters, former mining communities, people like that, who would not vote Conservative if you paid them. You know, their families have voted Labour since the end of the First World War in 1918. But they will vote for me. So I knew I could rip chunks out of Labour, and I said, you know, a month ago, I'm going to go to the north of England and take apart Jeremy Corbyn.
Boris Johnson now has a huge majority to implement Brexit, and if he falters, he knows who'll be hovering over his shoulder. In the meantime, Nigel Farage, I just said, is moving to America to help campaign for his good mate Donald Trump in next year's US election. I can't think of a better, braver and more effective man to have by your side. Truly, Nigel Farage stands as one of the most magnificent and successful political figures of our time. He changed the destiny of his nation. He changed the destiny of a continent. And he's changed the destiny of the world.